we are going to have one more episode for the day, and then we'll see how the week plays out. But if you don't see me, again, we'll be back next week sometime. Put a like, share, and subscribe if you want, and that notification bell so you'll know. And if you're on our audio podcast platforms, you can follow us on Spotify or YouTube and do the same. And with that, we had a lovely little bit of channel guidance food for thought with the horse's stamina and the bear with the qualities of the sea serpent - 5D mystic spiritual self-help. You can tune on into that throughout the week. It's an hour long and it has a bunch of beautiful cards that came forth. I do have something more, but again, I don't know if I'll have the time to record it. If not, it'll be at some other point, or it might just be in written format. And we have had the opportunity to talk about how everyone deserves to be loved and how everyone deserves love, but you need to love yourself first to know love. You also know about the honor that I have in being a co-author in a book that's coming out June 28th. The book is called The Way to God, if I remember correctly. I need to memorize it. And it's on our community page on YouTube. You can find out more about it, and as well, I mentioned it in the previous episode. And there's a pre-order link for anybody who's interested. My chapter is called God is Discerning Equanimous Love, and you also will have seen that we have an episode with that same title. So I'll be doing some more announcements for that throughout the week and the month. And you might also get to find some panel discussions with the lovely, amazing spiritual co-authors that I get to work with and talk to, and that we get to bring forth all of our diverse backgrounds and our acceptance. We accept all, we reject none, we know truths are individual, and so on and so forth. So spiritual self-help, mindful living, loving personal development practices involve those who are ready to be their higher self. And with that, I get to share with you this amazing journey that I had in my hypnotherapy session with the experience of the essence of pure vulnerability. But I won't give you all of it. I'm just going to give you the gist of why it's so amazing to be anchored in ventral energy, have the restorative, embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating self with an integrated brain, and words that you can embody if you do know eustress. So thoughts are soft, emotions are soft. If not, that's what you get to learn if you have your child parts uncharged. And that means you have the higher self in the lead. And so you can metabolize when things are coming up. And you know that it takes time to process any type of heartbreak, breakup, stuff like that. So since I was a teenager, I don't love any of the people from my past less. I love everyone the same, and people get confused. They also get confused when you talk about polyamory, unless they are people who are open-minded and understand that love is subjective, number one, but also that love is consistency. So it's when I meet higher self people who are empowered that they understand unconditional love. When I meet limited consciousness people, I know that their culture and society and or something limited is allowing them to continue to close this word love in what is something that is from yesterday. But I'm going to leave that alone. Love is like The Art of Loving of Eric Fromm. It's a verb. And so for me and a person who feels compersion, meaning I want every person on the planet to be happy, I can tell you that it's easy, and that it's easy to work through heartbreak, because being rejected isn't a fear. Being abandoned isn't a fear, meaning it's not something that I have a wound around. Okay, so a higher self doesn't have I'm working to ensure nobody abandons me, nobody rejects me for being Maria. Not performing. When I perform for love. No, that I don't perform for anyone. That's ridiculous. I'm authentically here. That's it. What do you want? Be yourself. It's actively through the essence of you that you get to be yourself. And then I bring to you some more good information to help you understand the journey is to get to navigating your nervous system in your ventral energy as a restorative, embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating person. You create resiliency through mindfulness, mindset, and mindset practices. And the inner growth mindset is what we use here. So nobody has to do any of this, and that's why we have our brothers and sisters with the fear that we thank. They hold the spot for those who won't make it to Patrick Tan to learn to love themselves first, or Terry Real to become functional adults. And that's including mystic, spiritual, and not mindfully, obviously living, loving people, even though they might think they are. So they don't experience the essence of pure vulnerability the same way I'm about to describe to you, because to me, it's a child, an 11-year-old. My 11-year-old came with the essence of vulnerability, because as I was exploring it, I'm able to notice all the children around me are pretending not to be children anymore in this moment of beautiful, again, hypnotherapy session. And they have masks like my facade friend and like Cusco, which are all adaptive child part. These are not Lucifers, demons, evils. No, these are people who have low self-esteem, indirect communication. They are in their sympathetic modulated embodiment, and they don't take any of their own, basically exiles, protectors, they're martyr superiors or blamers, and basically they don't take they don't self-regulate. So they don't care to self-regulate in their ventral energy, which means that we're having a good time as different people. They're not differentiating themselves, and that's, again, their journey, not mine. But my point is, I'm able to stay Maria. I'm surrounded by pretenders, and they're being mean unnecessarily, and I don't find them funny. But what I know most of all is they are pretending not to be children and to be vulnerable. And they're masking it with their meanness, which isn't meanness. It's not the I'm an unkind asshole. No, it's a child who's vulnerable, which makes sense because the grown-ups had explained to me what peer pressure was, what children do. So with all that education, I already knew what they were doing, and I just found it odd. Why would you keep pretending? We're friends, okay? So, safe haven, secure base. Nobody broke my faith in humanity because there's nothing to break. Children pretending not to be children, protecting themselves with mannerisms as an 11-year-old child part, which has been explained to me by therapists who's continuing to do that, and then they grew up and stayed in their 16-year-old, which is that child charge part of the fight response, which makes sense, okay? So when I learned all the attachment trauma education, that was in the past years. I'm still doing more courses because as a spiritual self-help, mindful personal development, and self-help mentor, content creator, podcast host, and guide, and all that, of course I'm going to keep learning. You never stop learning, because today they know some things about the embodied brain. Tomorrow they're going to know more things, like of science and space and everything. So people who don't want to learn, they can stay ignorant. I don't do ignorant. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is active ignorance. And I laugh when I hear human beings using lack of imagination for evil, because that's the minute of, if you're somewhere in the forest, totally, I can accept that phrase. The minute you have so many books of knowledge, I have to respect that you have decided something, but I'm thinking, wow, those 3 words together. I'm just wondering, imagination, yes, the neuroplastic agent of choice for every human being. Makes sense. You're obviously using the dark sides because you're saying that we lack imagination for evil. When I know evil, Michael Stone, forensic criminologist, makes a definition. They all fit the bill. So yes, like those children who are being mean and unkind, they're not evil in the way of philosophical religious books where you're bringing me monsters, where you're bringing me villains, where you're bringing me some type of battlefield from an action movie that means nothing except for I'm living life as Maria and I'm not in an action movie. A tu brute means you're a coward. Not, oh my God, they're so smart. I'm so afraid that they're going to win me over. Okay, so child me is thinking coward, mean, child, what are you doing? You're all I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. What? I'm not negating vulnerability, the pure essence of it, because you don't know how to be vulnerable. I'm just wondering, what the fuck are you doing? No, I wasn't wondering too much as a child. I got to explore it again in my hypnotherapy session as I'm watching again. It's not, I'm afraid of you, I'm upset at you. It's, you're pretending. You're being mean on purpose because you're vulnerable. You're an inconsistency. Like when I heard that there are those who go to do the parachute thing. Remember, I've done that. For anybody who's new, you don't know. So I forget what it's called, parasailing. When you parachute with somebody, though, I don't have the license to do it by myself. But the point is, I found out that people shit themselves. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. You'd think they would know that they are afraid. But no, most people don't own, apparently, their subconscious, because they don't own their 0-8-year-old, yet they like to talk about it on screen. I own my 0-8-year-old, so I know that if I'm afraid, and so when, as a grown-up, there are human beings who still, why are you so tight and afraid? It's only drugs, because my 11-year-old remembers Dare, and right now you're doing something that's not cool, and she's still here. Stop being somebody who's trying to get me in trouble and to offer me something that my brain doesn't want and I don't want. And yes, I smoke cigars and I drink wine, but that stuff, I don't need it. Also, smart human beings like Peter Levine are writing books, which I can't wait to buy, on how you want to be supported for all of those psychedelics with a good somatic, sensory motor, and more trauma therapists that will walk you through it. And the ones who think they're trying to imprison you, no, they know about the window of welcome that people don't have to affect and to emotions and to their body. So that trauma time stays as long as you are overwhelming yourself and re-traumatizing. So people who don't understand words is because they don't care to learn them and they don't care to believe them. And while my cherishable beliefs and opinions are potentially falsifiable because I'm grounded in reality, these human beings are doing research. As I said, I'll keep learning. What they have learned since 1960, I believe, about the nervous system proves what spirituality has been saying all along. Human beings, they have the utmost potential. Yes, it's only in your restorative, embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating, higher self-life that you'll ever achieve it. And well, lo and behold, again, let me bow down and thank my brothers and sisters of fear, because there are actively people with trauma charges so deep and so horrible, and they're using those dark sides of neuroplasticity to keep themselves wired shut in shame, blame, fault, revenge, to do unto others that which was done unto them, to punish each other, bystanders, punishing charges. I don't look up to anyone who's doing that. They remind me of the same kids who are pretending to be grown-ups as they're being unkind to each other, because those are the safety behaviors that a person who is defensive in their modulated embodiment by pretending I don't have feelings is doing as an 11-year-old. Which then becomes a 12 and a 13. And by the time I'm 14, I'm like, yep, I ain't playing with any of you. You don't have fun. You actually don't hear me when I say you're scaring me. You seem to think it's even funnier to scare me. I don't think it's funny to put me in physical danger. I don't find your drugs interesting or your alcohol. And I really think you don't know what you're going to do in life. I don't have any interest in idiots. I'm so sorry. No, I'm not. I actively don't want to be around dumb people and troublemakers. So I won't cast a stone, because I'm so sorry, God, I was. You're bad, you do drugs. You're good, you don't. You're bad, you break the law. You're good. Today, it's a very, very beautiful rainbow of colors, yes, but there's still laws. So we get to work with lawmakers, and then we get to work with prison cells, and we get to get good therapists in there. So that Michael Stone, as his forensic criminologist skill goes, they all get therapy. Other than that, the first to 7, it's the saddest group, because they could use Patrick Chan to stop dating beneath themselves, getting into trouble, not knowing or owning their sense of self, being a past self, acting like those same 11, 12-year-olds, but they're now grown-ups who end up in prison slowly in time because they disregard learning to love themselves first and get out of trauma. So the reality is, we're not going to give a green pass or a red pass to anyone. That's who we, the 5D collective, because emotionally mature, mentally mature, and physically mature, functional child adults, we learn things. It's not made up from thin air, and no, it's not perfection. I actively know that as an 11-year-old, all those kids were pretending, and I'm sure some of them had completely horrible upbringings, not saying anything different. And so I'm not going to say that an 11-year-old had the opportunity to consciously choose self-worth. No, they did not. They only had consciously the opportunity, though, to choose how they would conduct themselves. And you know what I know about groups and teenagers? They're all cowards. Because see, if there's one thing I saw, is them ganging up. And I'm not saying I didn't. I had my moments. I said, you were stupid. It's okay. The grown-ups talked about it. They all did not have each other's back, and that's why by the time I'm 14, I'm like, you're all liars. None of you had each other's back in a lot of situations where you said you would. None of you actively care about who you're scaring, who you're not scaring. You're not sounding smart by any chance, and I'm not making a big deal out of it, because you doing this, and this is actively putting you in physical danger. What did I learn about the adolescent brain? Dr. Daniel Siegel, come on in. Adolescent brain, luckily he has acronyms: essence, essential spark, social engagement, novelty, creative expression. Yes, so those are the 4 things that take place, and your brain works a certain way, which is why people can tend to get addicted to unhealthy self-soothing mechanisms, which they already will have began at their early stage of life due to having also unhealthy self-soothing mechanisms from lack of secure attachment. So they don't own their sense of self. So they're very easily, Peter Pan, how your Lost Boys doing? You following Wendy still? Awesome. And as you grow up, you just see them be Pinocchio on the island. So it's not impressive to see the fancy lady and man in suit that I make fun of. I won't name them, because they're doing a service to those who need them. In the meantime, I'm like, wow, you sure look fancy in your dresses. I'm wondering, no, I don't wonder what's inside of them. I know what's inside of them. And I know the dark sides of neuroplasticity and what it does. It enlarges your amygdala, actively uses your brainstem. You actively are dumbed down. You use a certain number of words and a certain number of pieces of information, and you don't know how to capacitate yourself to allow more into the room, which is where I won't be having a conversation with you in the first place. Because a person who will be that won't have the capacity to be able to engage with me without being a person who eventually at some point or another will begin to get upset. as they're going to notice that I don't follow a specific type of, let me be trending, let me be a group, let me follow your lead when you're speaking from your mouth. I won't be following your lead if it doesn't match with what my brain is thinking. And that's the part of truth where people who don't like confident people, like those 11-year-olds, so they end up being in even more of a group, and then they end up thinking that by teasing you that will maybe change your mind, which it doesn't. It actively doesn't have a person who can stand in their own 2 feet and 2 hands. I promised God that I would forgive because Jesus suffered for your sins, not me. I don't do anything except for be flawed, and that's it. And I'm going to stand with integrity as a ventral vagal stance stays. Yes, like this. So securely attached, non-traumatized people is because we securely self-regulate in our own healthy self-soothing. Why would I ever close my heart and close my mind to behaving in a cowardly manner with spite, envy, jealousy, or any of that which is actually low frequency? Not only the stories talk about it, attachment trauma proves it. So healthy self-worth people don't stoop down. Even as an adolescent, you can have the choice, but again, everybody's different story. So I have this thing called self-agency on a high. I was 3 telling my mother not to spank me. And so everybody has a story, which is why Robert Sapolsky with his book Determined is important. So are all the other attachment trauma educators. However, nobody gets a green or red pass. So the fact is, as an 11-year-old, I stood my ground in this hypnotherapy session. Comes out that this vulnerability, the pure essence of it, just said, yeah, it would be really nice. It would have been really nice to have children just be what we all are. And actually, as a grown-up, I do know that I will have the honor to meet the essence of vulnerability in its pure form, because they're emotionally, mentally, and physically mature people who are living their restorative, embodied, self-aware, accountable, regulating life from creating resiliency in their higher self, and from knowing, wow, we can experience the depth of emotions, but that's because it doesn't torture us. Okay, so again, I'm not afraid. I'm actively able to be vulnerable like a child, because that is what I was. I'm actively under the sky, which means I could physically die. But also remember, all my panic attacks and all of that gave me really good practice and pure fear. So those 2 emotions do not represent something where I'm like, oh my God, it's an anger doesn't come up, because anger is about correction, and I'm not God, and I'm not correcting your bad manners. Your bad manners are maladaptive, but they protected you in your environment, the inner and outer critic. They protected your child part. Your adaptive child part 2 protected you. So I feel for that inner child. This is automatically where an empowered feminine, because I'm a whole self, will be. I ain't here to be your judge or caster, none of that. Nope. As God is discerning equanimous love, because that's what unconditional love is. Unconditional love isn't, I'm going to give you a green or red pass. That's not, even though I know everybody interprets love their own way. But when you look at love, it's the oxytocin gene hormone on, from Stephen Porges' description of when a body is in a securely attached, healthy self-worth, non-traumatized way with a prefrontal cortex. If you want to use drama from history and all those telenovelas, go for it. That's the visceral. That's actively not love. Love is not unrequited. That means that we have 2 people who are not a match. That's what it is. But people who like ancient stories and who like to suffer, because that's what they're used to. They were born in a body that learned that love doesn't exist that way, so their body doesn't know it. And when they experience the ventral energy, they will do one of 2 things. They will welcome it, or they will fear it, at which point they will be reactive. And as Dr. Daniel Fox says, they will test it. And they will test it to the death of them. And as actually Peter Levine will say, they will say, something must be wrong with you, because I know I'm pure evil. You must be evil. This is the saddest thing that you'll ever hear, is when attachment and trauma educators are informing you of just how awful self-loathing is for a human being to meet unconditional love and to feel within their own body, you're a piece of shit. And not even once did they wonder, what the fuck am I saying? Because that's just how off they are. Kylie's explained it best when she got her boyfriend proposed to her, or said to her she is the one. And she said she had what I believe is called, not the black and white thinking, it's the other one. I forget. There's a term for it. But she's healed, or in remission, I think is the word she uses, for borderline personality disorder, and she is a healing narcissist. And so when he tells her she's the one, she's like, nope, nope. And she throws all his stuff out and she's cursing me out, or I forget the specifics. She knows her story best, so don't quote me. But in the meantime, he knew what was going on because he's informed, and they're both still together, thankfully, and they're growing and they're healing and they're doing a great job. They stand as authentic healing individuals for the community of people who want to heal. I tip my hat. See, that's a person who deserves to be seen. And when she became narcissist, she lost following. As she's an authentic person healing, she loses following, versus when she has brought forth some of the other stuff, which are, remember, trends and groups. Yes, those are teenagers, those are charges. I want people to like me for who I am. There's that group, which they're not standing for something that they are believing in for all. It is, I have a charge, I have a like or a dislike, is why it's a charge. And now I want everyone from the side to come and take my side, and then we're going to go shout, and that's called that charge part. So your capacity to be discerning is wise good judgment, not based on your likes or dislikes, based on a prefrontal cortex with a default mode network that is downregulated, a self that is here, a heart that is open, a brain that works and that learns things and then says, wow, we got a lot of people out there that want those bystanders, and they still look like the same 11-year-olds. When I see a crowd, I don't stand down because I see a crowd. I don't stand down at all if I'm in no physical threat. I will stand in my ventral vagal state like I did for the future husband that you all have heard about. And this is in another lifetime, many, many lifetimes from now. I stood my ground, and I did so because of seeing a situation, which reminds me of a card I have, which is the, it's a deck that has judgment, and it has people that are basically carrying somebody, like a little sacrificial, but they've just ganged up on the person. That's all they've done, with no actual integrity, humility, and no self-awareness or accountability, for that matter, for what they are bringing to the table. And as they did what they did, and I consistently stood in my place as a person who will not gang up on another human being, independently from how many different ways you try to bring me some shit. And then, oh, but we love. Yes, of course you do. You love. So when people find themselves not being backed up with something they have a charge for, they won't like it. And when people don't have a charge, because my likes and dislikes don't affect my embodiment, I bring to you that which I am, I feel, I do, whatever. It's an indifferent, because it's equanimity, it's equanimous, it's calm and centered. So it's not indifferent in that I don't have a preference. It's that I have a way to be grounded in that which Sam Harris calls reality. Cherishable beliefs and opinions are not necessarily truths, so you don't get charged like a little kid about it, especially if you are a smart human being. And that's where God could not be anything but a discerning, equanimous love, because anything that is fearful or mongering is from a temporal junction of a person who's lost their shit, basically, humanly speaking, which reminds me of when I learned about mythological gods and how they embody those human characteristics. Okay, so intelligence, consciousness, Akash, source, universe, anima mundi. It's love and it's smart. And so discerning, equanimous, because unconditional people will think that we give in general, they think good, bad, which, by the way, if you meet smart human beings, they will have panels of discussions on that, and where, the whole good, bad, good, evil, does anybody not know how that works? Anybody can be, again, considered that. Self-acceptance, I can be considered crooked, you can be considered crooked. An empowered, healthy, self-worth person will be able to stand in a room with a bunch of people, not make it into their mission to get louder or get silent. And being able to also know when is okay to speak and when it's better not. Why? Because, again, there is no point in trying to create a conversation where there will be none. So if I'm in a room full of people who are ignorant in a very, very not positive way of polyamory, there are those who would bring it up on purpose. And if they ever did, and I found myself in that situation, like I did with the mysticism full moon, I will know that I know how to stand for myself in the absence of anybody needing to chime in. And I also know that no words would be able to work in a way of making me feel flabbergasted. Now, if it's loved ones, that's a different story, because our loved ones, that relational field, are trying to get understood. So that can be where, oh, maybe I'm using the wrong words, which is a lot of fun, though, because, again, with our loved ones, we're learning how to speak each other's language. So that's something that you'll find very appealing. The pure essence of vulnerability. as not something that will provoke good or bad, the pure essence of any of the emotions, when you're a master, though, of your own ventral vagal state. And so your prefrontal cortex and your mind and your brain and your body and the self. And that's where I got lucky again. I have a higher self. She's great. She was here already at 11, and she stayed here because I said yes, one, to Jesus, God, Holy Spirit, but also had already been taught what true love is by my mother. And so being able to use your voice to talk, and then to know we're all different. Different doesn't mean better or worse. We all have weaknesses and strengths, which is why we come together as a herd, like Manny, Diego, and Sid, to support each other, because we have weaknesses and strengths, and we complement. Empowered feminines and empowered masculines come together. We don't play it small. In fact, the ones who do, well, let me just put it this way. As a mystic, I come in right now in the Enlightenment Soul Age group. When you do know that you are what you are, you'll also know that every single member of your oversoul plays a role to get you to exactly where you will have wanted to be. That doesn't mean that it is good or bad, because there are choice points. And that is the free will that God did give us and does give us. Now, Robert Sapolsky says we don't have any. I understand attachment trauma educators to where reactivity is not something one will be able to hold back. But what I do know is once you calm down and get out of that, you will have the opportunity to consciously evaluate what has happened and what you can do about it, and then you can address it. This doesn't make it, again, better or worse, but people have the opportunity to get out of that, which is a maladaptive pattern of behavior, when they put their best foot forward. If they need therapy, they go get it, again. But with people in relationships, what I'm trying to say is you don't have to pretend. So while I understand that for me, for example, it's unreasonable to expect a child to be able to be that ready to take on themselves when they have abandonment, rejection, and other wounds that I didn't have, I will notice that Patrick Tan, by the time he's 19, has said, like anybody else, I went because, and they have reasons, and it's because they want to be a member of society, they want to live a happy life, they want to feel, so there's a way that they seek to build loving relationships, they seek to feel emotions, they seek to get into touch with their humanity. So again, it's not a straightforward, in any way, shape, or form equation, and to this day, when an empowered feminine has the sad encounters that I have had, where the choice points have been fear, which means stagnating in the other soul age groups, which is something where they keep learning about themselves, so it's not a bad thing, but it means being a modulated, dysregulated, embodied version of themselves. So past self, like my facade friend, that's sad news. It's sad because of being able to have noticed those opportunities that were presented. And the same goes, though, for when I hear somatic therapists saying that everybody is leading themselves home and that it's okay, while Gabor Mate will say they have bad guts. And I will agree with both. The bad guts are the I'm used to unhealthy self-soothing mechanisms that involve fucking, drinking, drugging, eating, maladaptive patterns of behavior, inner outer critic. If I'm exposed to that type of lack of healthy self-worth living, this is why the ganging up on people, this is all something that whenever I will see it as a grown-up, it does not make me think, let me chime in or not. No, martyrs, superiors, and blamers are codependent groups. So as long as people remain in the relationship soul age group, the societal soul age group, they will continue to experience life and learn from those areas. Also, every group has a voice, has a choice. But for me, it's sad because I'm able to be here seeing as the higher self of me, that which is the essence of vulnerability, without needing to protect myself. So when I'm seeing that, I'm just seeing a bunch of children being mean to each other, and no Lucifer, no demon. The explanation make it clear, and their behavior, in fact, makes it clear. You know why? Because a child will always feel guilty when they have an equanimous and a discerning lover in the room. As I stare at you with secure attachment and non-traumatized, and I'm anchored in ventral energy, you will notice something off, and your body's resource is ventral energy, because you're a mammal. The kingdom of God resides within you. We are all children of God. That child will awaken to the fact that there's somebody in the room that is saying, okay, I'm pretty feeling off right now, and not in a judgmental way, but in a way that will be silent. And that's why they'll say, but we love, because that's the moment of where you will have a guilty conscience for the behavior that you will have brought forth, which is not what is intended to be bringing into the room, which is where, again, it's completely a waste of time, FYI, when people don't go to therapy and bring something like that. I mean, I don't do anything with it personally. I'm just letting you all know it's not fun to watch immature, emotional people be out there thinking that they're doing great. Pinocchio, have fun on the island. In the meantime, those who want to have fun becoming higher selves is really great. Those 11, 12-year-olds weren't impressive, nor the 13-year-olds, nor the 14-year-olds. I ended up choosing my herd, and today I can tell you that it's impressive to know of Kylie healing and people that are really healing and that are bringing authenticity, not secure attachment is boring. Sure it is. Okay, so yeah, the part of what people don't like, they don't like those of us who have answers to how they can get out of their hissy fit, pissy fit, and they prefer a story. Go have your stories and have a good time. In the meantime, I prefer to be called a buffoon, but I know that I'm not ignorant and that I'm not, making up shit when it comes to the well-being and health of a person. Also, the spiritual bypassers who just dress up and think they're honoring our ancestors, when I am pretty certain our ancestors are all pure love, which is the soul, which is, again, why anybody who wants to keep talking about good and evil will not actively hear what they just said. So they can continue then with those rigid texts and hang out with only people that believe in that, because if you are with mystics and spiritual beings, Akashic record readers, Reiki masters, shamans, all of those under the spirituality umbrella, we are all under anima mundi, meaning we know we all have ancestors that meant to bring us all together, because the soul is pure love, spirit's pure love. So there is no equation. This good evil thing is for our ancestors who didn't have answers to a lot of things, and we understand it. And the 4D bandwidth is actively what it's called, and I have more stories for you. We won't get into that right now. In the meantime, I wanted to share again the experience of the pure essence of vulnerability in its actual pure 11-year-old form, and how when it spoke to me, it just said it would be really great to have met at that age those who are 11 and pure vulnerable as we grow up. I'm sure, out there, thanks to the smart trauma therapist, I'm adding words, but thanks to people being aware and choosing themselves and then becoming their self, and then with safe haven, secure-based relationships, of course, that is important because it's a step-by-step process for people to uncover, and then it's also being with the right people. Not every person is a higher self, that's for sure. And I'm not laughing because it's funny, but we will be back with more. In the meantime, I've felt pure other emotions too, and I've heard tones of pure emotions, and that one's funny in some of my courses. I'm like, wow, they're like an active embodiment of that one. That's really the one focused and the enamored with themselves, the ones who are cut off from Purusha, and Prakriti. So Purusha is pure consciousness, that's unconditional love, and Prakriti, pure energy. And it's from a different number of traditions. I forget the names and the words, but what I do know how to tell you from my course is that they're cut off, and they're not in their prefrontal. So yes, their brain is using the left dominant. Their default mode network scans self and others. Their frontal lobes are flopped down. They're using their amygdala. The imagination is being used with the amygdala. So we got, yes, a downloader. They're downloading channeling, but they're in their safety behavior. And so they got a Cusco mask on, and they are a squirrel or an Yzma or a Cusco or an adaptive child with spiritual bypassers and or adaptive child part people. And so again, the not hearing is because, like my facade friend, they're all over it with their brain thinking of things in inner and outer critic, with the martyr, superior, blamer, not knowing that they're playing trauma time, as Pat Ogden would point out, and that they could get healed, that unfinished business, with someone like Terreal to become the best version of their self, which is their higher self. The pause self protected them. The adaptive child protected them and still does, but it's no longer a good strategy. It's maladaptive behavior patterns and or adaptive child part patterns, and so you're also offline, and that's why, again, Robert's post would determine. So having compassion is great, obviously not giving green or red passes, but also trauma dumping, not doing any of that either. And when we meet church, you just know that they are not really interested and having what is an expanding conversation. They're just wanting to share what their 3-year-old wants to share, and we let them. That way we can go and hang out with the infinite higher human conscious potential people who live restored embodiment, self-aware, accountable, and regulating lives with healthy self-worth, and empowered couples who don't look like little... Oh, we're going to get back to that. Talk some more about love. Yes, so empowered couples, love. Really fun. Very fun, yes. Again, thanks for stopping by. Like, share, and subscribe. It'll help the channel grow. And please have a wonderful day.